Our guest today is J.H. Baker, the former president of Kohl's. Mr. Baker, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're very welcome.
Now, you joined Kohl's as the president in 1986.
That's correct. We did a leverage buyout in 1986, and there were three partners, Bill Kellogg, John Hermer, and myself.
Exactly.
Along with financial partners, naturally.
Exactly. But could you tell us a little bit about your career in retail before that and how it prepared you for leadership at Kohl's?
Okay. I graduated from the Wharton School and went into the Army, and after that I got out, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, so I took a couple aptitude tests, and everything kind of pointed toward retailing. And it's very funny, my mother had a millinery store, so when I was a young boy, I used to take cash and bring up hats from the basement and stuff. So maybe that's where I got started, but I'm not sure that's true. But at least I have it in my bones. And so I started a Macy training program and worked my way up and stayed about 9 years at Macy's and did kind of everything. And I look back, and it was probably the best thing because I had every type of job. I worked in the stores, I worked on the floor, I worked in the stock room, I was a buyer, I was in store management. So I really had the opportunity. I learned a lot, and it really helped me in my whole career. Even though in those days you moved a little slower, everybody likes to get promoted faster, but there weren't as many openings, so people didn't leave so rapidly, so it took a while to get there, but I had great training. After that, I went to a store named Orbach's, and sometimes you get a break in life. I went in as the administrative assistant to the president. It was a gentleman called Bob Suslow, and he became my mentor. And sometimes you're very lucky that you have somebody that really takes an interest in you, and you work very hard for him, but you learn so much from him. And I learned probably in the 6 months, it was incredible about merchandising and dealing with people and stuff. And then I became a merchandise manager, and I had 3 different areas. I had started with dresses and juniors and sportswear. And then Bob went to Famous Bar in St. Louis. That time it was a May Company store. Today it's all Macy's because Macy's bought. But at that time it was the premier store in St. Louis, and probably still is, but it's under Macy's. And I became a general merchandise manager and did that for a few years. And then Bob became president of Saks Fifth Avenue, and I came back to my home, New York. I mean, I did follow him around. And my first job there, which was really interesting, I was the first director of stores at Saks. Before, it used to report to the chairman, and it wasn't really set up. It was they'd have a meeting once a year, they'd do the reviews, but that was it. And we actually regionalized Saks, and that's what they are today. It's regionalized, and what we did in 1977 exists today at Saks and most retailers. So that was quite an accomplishment, and it was a little frustrating at times because none of them were involved in merchandising, and I'm a merchant. But we helped with that too. We got merchants into the stores. Then I wanted to get back in merchandising, so I became a general merchandise manager, and I had sportswear, cosmetics, and juniors. I don't want to say it's the glory years only of Saks. I mean, I would imagine Saks will be good today. But we had incredible talent, people, a whole group of us that became presidents and chairmen of companies. And we just were picking up 20% a day. And it was a phenomenal, fun time to be there. And we had people like Roger Farah, who's also a Wharton graduate, who's went on to become president of Ralph Lauren, and now Tory Burch and other jobs, and Bert Tansky head of Neiman's, Arthur Martinez head of Sears, and on and on. We all worked together, so it was like really a phenomenal thing. Then Bob took over as head of Battis, the whole retail division. I went in to work in corporate, which is not what I wanted to do. So then I went and worked and became a head of a specialty store division and also the corporate buying. And then in 1986, Battis decided they wanted to divest themselves of retailing. They're basically a tobacco company, and British American Tobacco in England, and the U.S. part, that's how it's Battis, was in Louisville, Kentucky. And so at the time, the only thing they kept was Saks, Marshall, Fields, and Thimbles. I think they kept that because I had a 3-year contract. I don't know. Maybe they didn't want to pay me out. It's funny. But I had like 400 people reporting to me at the corporate buying office, and they were all going to be let go. And it was a strange, what happened was very strange. They called us in on a Sunday. Somehow Women's Wear Daily got the news that they were going to do this, but they never told any of us. So they had to make the announcement Sunday. Then we had to go in front of our people on Monday and tell them this was happening before they read it in the newspaper. But there was no severance set up yet. You know, they had nothing arranged. So it's funny, I went to my boss who ran Battis Retail, who was also fired, Arnold Harrison, and I said, I'm not going to fire anybody. I can keep anybody on who's essential. I'm just going to get them jobs. He said, do whatever you have to do. And it took me 6 or 7 months, but I got 98% of them jobs. And so it's probably one of the best things I've done. It was a very, tough thing to have to do that. And then I knew I had to leave there because I saw the handwriting on the wall. And in another year, they had sold Saks, Marshall Fields had been bought by Dayton Hudson, and Thimble's was closed. So they got out of retailing. So I had 3 job offers. And one, my wife, thought was pretty exciting, to be head of Ferragamo USA. But I'm not a big, tall, great-looking Italian, and so I don't think they were going to make me a partner. And then I called Bob Suslow again, and just asked his advice, because he knew all 3 companies. He said, just wait a minute. And that's when Bill Kellogg, who became my partner, and who I had known since 1977, we had been friends, and they were saving the 3rd partnership for me. But I had to be kind of released from my contract from Battis, because Battis was staying in as a partner also. When we bought the company from them, they kept a stake in it. And so I had to go, and his gentleman's name was Hank Fagone. He's the one that fired all of us. And I had to have dinner with him. And we talked about about what he's done in his life and everything. And then at the end, I said, Hank, I got great news for you. I'm going to be your partner. And he said, what do you mean? I said, I'm going to be a big partner in Kohl's. You're a partner in Kohl's. We'll work together. He says, you're under contract to us. You can't do that. So I remember saying to him, because he wasn't my friend, I said, well, you can have me as a great partner, or I'm going to work as hard as I can one of these other jobs as a tough competitor. You have your choice. And I left. And Bob called, and Bill called, and I called. And what happened is he got a little pound of flesh. We bought the company in September, and I couldn't start till October, So that's how it happened. And at that time, Kohl's was 39 stores, right, doing about $280 million and losing money. Right. Something had happened at Kohl's. It kind of started out as a value department store. But then, because Gimbel's was a competitor and owned also by Battis, Gimbel's Milwaukee, they decided they brought somebody in from Target to make it a mini Target. Well, you don't need a mini Target. So fortunately, actually, as it turned out for us, Kohl's had a couple of bad years, a year and a half of bad sales and profits down. So nobody wanted to buy us, so we were able to buy it at a relatively good price, and then Battis stayed in as a partner.
So if I could ask a quick question.
Yes.
What was your assessment of what needed to be done to fix the problem at Kohl's? What was the situation in retail in the 1980s, and where did you see the upside for growth?
Well, there was a company called Mervyn's. Did you know that company? It was owned by, it was a separate company, and Dayton Hudson bought it along when they had Target and both. And Mervyn's was this value department store. It was about a $4 billion company. And it was kind of what we aspired to, hoping we could do better naturally, but of giving great brands at great prices, having a low-cost structure, and so that we could do all these things, and having a simplistic shopping environment. So we had talked about that, because I had known Kohl's for quite a few years, and that's what it had been, and then it had lost that. So when we walked in, it got a lot of problems, but we realized that we had to change the merchandising and get back to better than what we were, but really get these great brands. We had things, because we were, like a mini Target. We had food, we had big candy departments, we sold tobacco, all things that didn't fit into anything we did. So we had to really do kind of a total changing back to the merchandising that we were, but of course take it to a new level. Now we had a guy, it was funny, Walter Levy Associates, who we had known for years. He was a guy who could advise you and things, and we'd used him at Saks and other places. And we told him what we thought. We came up with our plan. Let's get an outside guy to look at it. Right. They always want to tweak it, but they said, sounds great. Because there was a great need for a niche for a value department store. And that's what we were. Some people call us a discount store, but we were not. I fought that very hard. And of course, we were a department store, just, we had checkout lanes. We used carts because that came from, Kohl's was basically a supermarket chain. So there's this low-cost culture, which helped me as the merchant because, I could give great value to our customer. Our cost structure was lower than our competition. That was a big edge to have.
What was your strategy to take Kohl's from a regional chain to a national one? How did you go about?
Well, I think the first thing we did was fix it, right? First thing we had to do was fix Kohl's. And we were fortunate. A couple of things happened that were very fortunate for us. There is some luck in life. I have to admit, though, we worked 8 days a week. It didn't come easy. So that's retailing, but true. But what happened is Gimbel's went out of business, which was our main competitor. It was Gimbel's and Bergner's at the time. So you lost one of your big competitors, and most of our stores were in Wisconsin. So we were without one of our competitors. So that helped us a lot. And the other competitor wasn't the toughest store to compete against. I hope I don't insult anybody. And then, so that was one thing. At the same time, when Gimbel's went out of business, we knew all the good people there because they were part of Batters. So we got some excellent merchants and store people. Then a year later, Marshall Field's was combined with Dayton Hudson, and we got a lot of great people from there. Within that same year, Mervyn's had a Texas operation, but it wasn't doing well, and they closed it. So we got people from there. So in a very short time, we got people from Gimbel's, from Marshall Field's, and from Mervyn's to this little store in Milwaukee called Kohl's. And that was a real break. So we went from pretty low talent to terrific talent in a very short time. And then we came up with what we wanted Kohl's to be, this value department store offering great brands at great prices, and came up with a racetrack look of a store, meaning you walked in and just walked around in a circle, and every department had frontage. And what made us different in a way is that in most department stores, you might find sportswear in 3 locations, 4 locations. Sportswear, 1 location, men's 1 location, juniors 1 location, children's 1 location, accessories in the middle. So it was ease of shopping. And we also we had stores that intercepted the malls, so you got people there, in and out, and going home, and, so made it easy for them. And we did a lot of advertising, okay? And that was something. Our advertising in the past was not very good. So we got new people in that whole department. We revamped it and came up with, an advertising look that was exciting, key items and depth. And then we had a merchandising philosophy. We saw, I spent my whole life in department stores, and 2 of the big weaknesses in those days is that they were never in stock on basics, and when you had ad goods, you ran out of ad goods or didn't have them. And you would frustrate people all the time. So one of the things we came up with, that we said we'd be 90% in stock on basics, and we put in systems, and we did a good job of that. And you funded it, and you did it. And when you did ad goods, you advertised out of your assortment. So it wasn't like we brought in special purchases. We advertised what we owned out of our assortments, and buyers knew if they didn't have ad goods, they'd be in my office Monday morning. And they didn't want to be in my office Monday morning. I wasn't as pleasant when you didn't have ad goods. And so realizing how important it was, and also that we made sure our prices were sharp and that people didn't undersell us, because we could beat their prices if we had to, and we, because of our cost structure. So then in 2 years, which was amazing, we paid off our debt. One of our big partners were the Simons, the Simon Malls, which are the biggest people today. And they were our partners because they had like 7 or 8 of our stores, and that's how that happened. And so Main Street, do you remember when Federated went into bankruptcy?
Yes.
And so one of the companies they had, one of the small companies called Main Street, and they were in Chicago, Detroit, and Minneapolis. And this is exactly where the Simons said we should be going. And they had stores similar to ours, but much better locations. Federated was very powerful. And it was our concept of merchandising, value, price, but they didn't understand the low-cost culture. So they had kind of the department store expenses. So they didn't make any money. They lost money because they had lower prices and higher expenses. But we had the chance to buy them and buy them at a very good price because nobody really wanted them. But we had to vote on it, and Battis, because they still had Marshall Fields at the time, didn't want to give us, real estate in Chicago. But between the Simons and us, we had over 50%, and we bought it. Brought Morgan Stanley in as a partner, and we had slightly the majority, wouldn't give them the majority. We said the 3 of us want to have that because we're running it, and that's how the new partnership happened. And to your question, then we were starting, we had debt again, but in a couple of years we went public. And then the reason we went public is so we could expand, and we could start to grow, and we'd have the money.